After all, don't you think that's a little bit too dramatic? Can you give me something with a bit more of a beat? Yeah, that's better.
G'day folks and welcome to the Vookcast, Australia's Nintendo podcast. My name's Oliver Brandt and in this episode I'm joined by Angelo Valdivia.
Hey paisanos.
Michael Goncalves.
Hey team.
And Luke Henderson.
Hello there.
We've got a great episode lined up for you, all about a surprising Wii U port, some bizarre new announcements from Nintendo, a bunch of new remasters, and more. But first, let's talk about an alarm clock. So this is one of the bizarre announcements from Nintendo. Nintendo announced an alarm clock. It's called the Nintendo Sound Clock Alarmo. It plays Nintendo noises and sound and music and stuff when your alarm goes off. And they get louder the longer they go on, especially if you stay in bed. It automatically stops playing when you get out of bed, but It detects your movement and will play sounds based on the selected Nintendo game. And it's designed for single sleepers. They say that if you have multiple people in a bed, it probably won't work too well. And you can set it to be a standard alarm instead of, a motion-based one. The way that they're releasing it is kind of weird. It was a lottery. Basically, if you had Nintendo Switch Online, you could apply for the lottery, and then if you were selected, you could buy it for $160, which is wild. But they will be selling it just to everyone in March 2025. What do we think about this? Because this is obviously like part of their like quality of life stuff that they started, 15 plus years ago, 20 years ago almost at this point. But does anybody have a need for a Nintendo alarm clock?
I think this is well beyond need. Nobody needs this.
Yeah.
It's just one of those
interesting.
Yeah, it's just an interesting little neat thing that's uniquely Nintendo.
If this had come out during the Wii era, I'd have 100% gone, yeah, that's Nintendo, 100% fine. Because Nintendo were very experimental back then. But this just seems like the weirdest time to announce and release something like this.
This would have cost more than the Wii.
Probably.
Yeah. I mean, I think, the sleep tracking tech that they're using is, like, very interesting. There are a few other devices that do it. Notably, the Google Nest Hub, or whatever the fuck they call it, because they changed the name of that thing, like, 3 times. Like the Google Home that has a screen can essentially do the same thing with sleep tracking, with the same kind of sensor. So that's what Nintendo's done here. But yeah, it's just such a strange thing to do, I think, to release a $160 alarm clock that like plays drowning Pikmin at you when you don't get out of bed. I mean,
Literal gunfire.
Or literal gunfire from Splatoon.
I love that, like, the common meme that everyone made when this was announced was the Guardian from Breath of the Wild.
That is a good meme. I do like that meme a lot. It is quite funny.
But yeah, it doesn't connect to any sort of console. It doesn't connect to an app or anything. You can connect it to the internet to get more, themes and stuff in the future. But yeah. What a strange device.
And yet, I still want one.
I bought one.
Yeah, I mean...
You're part of the problem.
Oh, that is... I've never said I'm not part of the problem.
Oh, that's great.
I think it's an interesting thing because it's Nintendo being weird again, which we haven't seen for the longest time. So I'm happy that they're being weird, but it's like, be weird and announce a new console before you announce an alarm clock.
No, look, I don't mind Nintendo being weird and releasing basically junk, right? But the problem is that they're charging $160 for it. Like, that's the stupidest thing. Like, if this was like some $20, $30 thing, which let's face it, that's what it looks like, then like I'd have no problem with it, because like, okay, cool. Like an alarm clock, yeah, sure, it's a little more expensive than a normal like alarm clock you get, like, I don't know, cheapest ships at the reject shop or something like that, one that just like screams at you to wake up.
Would
But
you
the
like
fact is-
Nintendo Alamo or a PS5 Blu-ray drive? Because they're the same
Yeah,
price.
right? Or like a couple of extra Joy-Con, or like 2 or 3 games. Like the fact that this is an alarm clock that costs $160. Like if you showed me any like just normal alarm clock that costs $160, I would laugh you out of my house, right? But because this is a Nintendo one, like everyone's just like, oh, I'm just, yeah, okay, well, it's a bit weird, but you know, they're doing some good stuff.
I mean-
There's some cool tech in there. Just like, sure, all right.
Oh,
It's
I'm
still the
under no
cheapest-
illusion that this is wild. Like, I'm not
talking about you
defending it
guys.
in
I'm
any
talking about just
capacity.
I'm talking about the
The
wider
general
conversation
populace.
in general. Like people are
Yeah,
just
right.
like sort of defending this, but also at the same time saying it's absolutely not for them. It's like, well, then why is this exist then?
Yeah, I mean, it is still the cheapest standalone sleep tracker on the market, which is a weird thing to say about a Nintendo product.
No, the cheapest one is the one you carry in your pocket all the time because it does a million other things as well and is well worth the investment.
Right, but it can't do sleep tracking in the same way that this can, which is like the point, right? Is that it does.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, but like it's for like if people who care about sleep tracking, like this is a
People who
not
care about
terrible
sleep
option.
tracking, I'm not gonna go out and buy a Nintendo alarm clock.
Okay, but people who care about sleep tracking and are also Nintendo fans might be willing to spend
Okay,
$160
yes,
on
that
it.
very specific. That very
The Venn
specific
diagram on that
diagram.
one.
Yes. Okay. Cool.
Look, I'm just glad that like
The,
they're
the
getting
two
the weird
circles, you
shit.
mean?
You know, I'm just glad that they're doing all this weird shit, and it's like weird shit that is separate from the next console, and not weird shit that is part of the next console, right? Like, I'm hoping that the next console is relatively straightforward, just essentially a Switch, but you know, better.
Yeah.
And isn't packed with weird gimmicks.
I'm
No,
at least
I heard
happy
the
that.
next- Oh, go on.
Go.
I was gonna make a bad joke and say I heard that the next Switch console is gonna have like a sperm counter in there. So, but never mind. Go on.
Oh my god. I'm saying I'm happy at least it doesn't seem to be trash. Like, it isn't like a piece of shit hardware. Like, it seems to be well built. It works. Like, that would have been the worst part if it was $159 and it was just not functional.
Like Kmart levels of quality, yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing, like, price-wise, is we seem to have been given a bit of a bump. Like, in Japan, I think it's about 120 Australian dollars to buy one in Japan, so we got a bit of a price bump on our local cost. But other than that,
We got to pay more for sleep here, Luke. That's why.
probably.
Well, just the conversions don't work when nighttime is like during daytime during the US, so
Genuinely though, if like this was like significantly cheaper, like 1/5 the price, then completely different story in my books.
Yeah,
I'll
this
have a completely
honestly, I
different
think
opinion
$80 would have been like the highest point it should have been.
Yeah,
Like,
they should have
nearly
Maybe.
down cheaper, but $80 at the maximum for here.
they should have priced
should
it the
been
same
maximum.
as the Game & Watch consoles,
Yeah, sure.
which
Yeah.
is like $89, $99, whatever it was. I think that
They've
would have
got a
been
clock and an alarm in
decent.
them.
They do.
Now you
Screen.
mentioned that. Now I'm like, should I cancel my order for this thing? Because now I don't need 3 different Nintendo alarm clocks.
I mean, you can just scalp it like a piece of shit.
Yeah, good.
So,
Sure.
yeah, I mean between now and March, I mean nobody else is selling them, you know.
could
No,
buy
don't
from
do
in
that.
Japan.
Don't scalp them.
do
it.
See, I feel like if you just get an app that lets you play music, and then you could connect this to our next news topic, then you're saving yourself way more money then, because then you have an alarm clock that also plays you Nintendo music.
Yeah, which let's talk about that because that was another strange announcement from Nintendo, but a very welcome one too. So instead of just dropping all of its music on something like Spotify or any of the other music services, Nintendo has made its own Spotify. So it's an app called Nintendo Music. It's available to all Nintendo Switch Online subscribers. Available on iOS and Android. So yeah, it's just Spotify, but for Nintendo Music. There are a few really neat features where like, because tracks in video games often have to loop. You can just set a track to loop for 15, 30, 60 minutes, which is interesting, and something that is clearly Nintendo understanding the market a little bit, because on YouTube there's hundreds and hundreds of this track extended to 30 minutes or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, at the moment there's only 23 games available. Well, the music for 23 games available. It launched with 22, and then a couple of days later, Super Mario Wonder was added. And yeah, I can link to your play history and show you music from those games. It has Nintendo created playlists, which are pretty fun, and yeah, there are a couple drawbacks. Only having 23 games on there is a little bit of a small number to launch with. But it does seem like more are being added regularly. We already know that another one's being added in a couple days. And the lack of composer information in the app is a real letdown, I think.
It's real Nintendo stuff right there.
Yeah.
Here's our art,
it's
but
disappointing.
we will not mention the actual artists.
Yeah.
I also don't like that every track has its own like screenshot instead of like an album having like a piece of album art. Like, for me personally, I dislike that. But
I think, it's kind of interesting in a way that's like it's showing you like the context of that song or that track, which is, I think it's an interesting thing to do. It definitely won't appeal to everybody. And I think if you do the spoiler option, turn spoilers off, it just uses the album artwork anyway, or just one.
That feature in itself is also just kind of weird to me. I'm not against it. I think that's kind of cool, but it's also just kind of funny that it's like, oh, we have a spoiler prevention feature around music. It's like,
well, I assume that like in the future
considered to be a spoiler.
There will be like games that the soundtrack is released fairly early on into the release cycle. So, having that spoiler option is cool, I guess. But yeah,
I've never thought about being music spoiled before. I guess if the title of a track maybe like gives it away, but like the music itself, I would never be like, oh yeah, this is X.
Well, the spoiler is
before it happens anyway.
Screenshots that it shows. So like
right.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So
like
in the case of like
Pokemon, pieces aren't just labeled like Tingle is chic. Like it's not that kind of a spoiler.
I mean, if it's just Tingle's reveal, then maybe.
In the
that's
case
a different game, man. Tingle's reveal.
The moment I said that, I was like, oh no.
In the case of Pokemon, some of the screenshots are like champion battle or like the final battle against a particular trainer and stuff, and like that stuff can be spoilers. So it'll just show like the regular album art for that instead. I
think it's just one of those like, this is definitely not what anyone wanted, but it's done in the most Nintendo way possible. And it's not awful. Like, the app is very functional and it works well, and the audio quality is fine. It's not lossless, but it's high bitrate MP3. It's just, it's just so interesting that, of course, Nintendo would do it like this instead of...
Also, so I'm going to change hats now. So I was a big negative Nancy about the previous item, right? But this one I actually think is actually a good idea in a sense, because now it's what I've always been saying about NSO, right? Now it's actually adding value to the service.
Yeah.
But the problem is that it adds value years down the line. So like for all the people who subscribed 5 years ago, like the subscription that they had back then is nowhere near worth as much as what it is now when they paid their $40-$50 or whatever it was, right? So like $40-$50 now gets you a whole streaming service with a bunch of Nintendo game music on it. So this is the kind of problem that I have with Nintendo's rollout.
Hopefully,
this kind of thing.
Hopefully they do it like really well, like, and they really, really expand their library of music.
Well, hopefully they do, right? Because like it's not like the emulation apps where they have to secure rights for a game later on down the track and can only release it here. So no, like this is all Nintendo's music. Like they can just put it out whenever they want, and it's not it's not like they have to have an emulator to be able to play the music. Like it's just friggin' music. Like just put the music
On that
there.
exact topic, that's literally the next thing I was going to talk about. I'm wondering for the earlier games, like not stuff that is pre-recorded, like how they're getting the audio for those games, like SNES games and NES games. Are they just running it through an emulator? Are they running it on hardware and capturing off actual hardware? I'd be very intrigued.
Yeah. I do wonder how long would it take for something like a Square to do something similar and do all of their like, older RPGs, Chrono Trigger, etc., putting all their music out on there so it's not on something like Spotify. I feel like
So
within about 10 years, we're going to get even more of a splintered path when it comes to music services. We're kind of going that way.
I don't.
Like 10 years
Yeah,
ago.
I think that ship has sailed. Like, I do
I
not
don't
think
know.
you could do that.
I don't know. I mean, like, I don't want to get too much into this because it's a completely different situation. But you get people like Taylor Swift, right? Is re-recording her own album so that way she can get full royalties for her own music because she's basically reproduced all the music.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I wonder
I
if
think
something similar like that could happen with other publishers, like Sony brings out their own, and then I
think
don't
for very specific artists, like I think Taylor Swift is in a league of her own, right? If anyone could do what you're saying, it's her, right? But I do not
Sure.
think that you can apply that rule to the pretty much anyone else. There's
I'm not
very,
saying-
very few people.
No, I'm not saying artists specifically. I'm just saying like labels or something like that will have their own kind of like how Paramount Plus has their
Yeah,
own
for sure.
streaming
That's what
service.
I'm
Something
saying.
like
I think that ship is truly sailed. Like no one is going to go back to paying individual subs for different libraries of music. Like
Maybe.
it is because it's such the de facto standard that if you want to listen to music, you pick a music subscription service and that has all the music you want. And as soon as that starts fracturing again, then it's going to be exactly like what's happening in the streaming space, like the video streaming space, where piracy is skyrocketing, and it'll continue to happen again.
People absolutely go back to pirating before they start subscribing to new services. But like everyone hates Spotify at this point. Like people who make music fucking hate Spotify so much because it just absolutely rips them off so bad. So anyway,
yeah.
I've completely derailed the conversation.
I do think it's interesting, like, because there are other companies like Sega and Square Enix who do put their music on Spotify and other music services,
And Capcom too. They've been doing it a lot lately.
and Capcom too. But like, a lot of those are just sort of more recent tracks. This is something like you're not going to get like, Sonic 1's soundtrack on Spotify, right? Like it's not there. It probably never will be there. It's interesting that we're getting like all of these retro tracks in addition to like the newer stuff in Nintendo games as well. Like, and acknowledging the differences between NES versions of games and Famicom Disk System versions, because Metroid has two different. I mean, they're the same soundtracks, but like the Famicom version is greatly expanded because of the extra audio tracks available, and they have both of those on there, which I thought was really, really interesting to see. So yeah, the addition of like retro music is a nice touch, and I think it's got some like really neat features that are very specific to games. That like obviously the extending and looping stuff is not something that Spotify would offer. So I think that's a really
Spotify has
really
their
nice
smart
touch.
suggestions. You'll pick the Zelda soundtrack and you'll turn on shuffle and accidentally hit smart suggestions, and you'll get some random bullshit song from some artist you've never heard of.
God, I hate
Kazakhstan or
Spotify's
something.
AI bullshit. Yeah, I think I don't know that I would have rather like somebody come along and do one for all music rather than just like Nintendo doing it for its own music. Like if Sony Music or whatever was like, hey, this is the video game music app, here it is, or like Spotify made a specific one for video game music that had these kinds of features, that would be better, because as it is, I can't mix the Pokemon tracks that I like in with the Kingdom Hearts tracks that I like, because they're split across two different apps. But I think I don't know, I like this approach better than just slapping it up on Spotify.
I'm actually super surprised at how little negative I have to say about this, if anything, really. Like, is it, what I would have preferred? No. Is it an awful solution? Also, no. Like, like I said, the app seems well built. Like, the music quality is great. Like, they're adding stuff immediately, which is awesome. it's not a separate sub. Like, yes, you have to pay for NSO, but if you're a Switch Online member or like already, like whatever, who cares?
Yeah.
So
It kinda goes
yeah,
back
it's
to what
also good.
It kind of goes back to our conversation a few episodes ago. We were talking about like Nintendo's efforts in mobile. Like they seem to do all right with mobile. Like they seem to actually get it, and they have an understanding of how to use it to their advantage. There are some missteps, like the NSO voice chat app was kind of garbage, but like this, on the other hand, actually does make sense. There isn't a web version of this though, is there? You can't listen.
No, there's not.
No.
So there's a misstep, right? So
yeah.
hopefully, maybe they'll rectify that.
I think the
eventually.
big
Probably.
misstep is that there isn't a Switch version of it.
Yeah, sure.
Like,
Yeah,
why
I mean-
can't you just have this on Switch?
Yeah.
On the one hand, yeah, but like, I don't know.
You
It
can't-
feels
you can't-
a little bit wasted on Switch because, like,
You
I
can't.
I mean,
So
yeah, you
it's
have to have
interesting.
the app running for sure, but like, I feel like this is definitely going to be a Switch 2 thing.
You
where
can't
you'll be able
wirelessly
to
beam the music.
Play
from
this
a
music in the
Switch.
background.
You can't wirelessly beam the music from a Switch to a TV though, like you can with a phone, right? Like casting it or something like that, or using a Sonos.
No, you can have your
sound
Switch
file or
plugged
something.
in though, and just have it on
Yeah,
the
no.
TV.
You do, but then you have to have like the screen on and everything, right? Like unless you have.
Sure, I'm not saying it's
Function.
like it's definitely not a perfect solution. It's just a little surprising because
Yeah,
like
no. I'm just saying that the experience of using a phone makes sense and probably is a little
totally.
more functional than having to have the Switch.
remember,
version.
Michael, if you want to have your music on Switch, it is there. It's just built into Super Smash Bros. Ultimate.
Yeah, it's in the game.
Oh, of course, my bad.
Yeah.
I do want to
Go
point
on.
out. So we've got 23 titles. I do laugh at Nintendogs because just some of those tracks are just weird. But the fact that the Wii channel, like the Wii system music's there, like the eShop, the news
I
channel, the
love
weather
that.
channel, the
I mean-
photo channel.
I'm gonna.
If
jam to
anything
that
was gonna
so
be,
much
if
more.
anything's gonna be on there, it's that. Like that's the
Yeah.
stuff people want.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But
One of my
terms
friends immediately said, "Man, this app has Link to the Past and Super Mario World. I'm all in." And I was like, "Oh."
But you got the Wii Shop channel.
in terms of what's still to come in the video that Nintendo put out, they've got Wii Sports, Mario 64, Skyward Sword, Splatoon 2, Wind Waker, Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Conquest, and F-Zero X from the 64. They're the games that have said, hey, these are coming. So Wonder wasn't in that list, and it showed up like the day after the app launch. So they're clearly going to be a bit sneaky with releasing things onto the service at random times that we don't know it's coming. So
curiously, just no Xenoblade at launch, which I was really, really shocked about because Xenoblade has some really strong music, and also it plays into our next.
I was about to say, is this another like sneaky transition?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think given the next news story, it's very surprising that they announced one thing and then the next day they announced something that they could absolutely capitalize on with Nintendo Music, but just completely did not.
You mean how they
because they
might
wanna-
do it in the weeks leading up to the release of this particular?
Yeah, probably.
Or they're just probably going to try to sell the soundtrack first and then wait a few months and then release it.
I mean, the soundtrack, as far as we know, hasn't been remastered at all, so you can still buy the soundtrack.
Well, then maybe they're
from-
relying on sales.
10 years
Anyways,
ago.
let's hear this transition.
Yeah. I mean, the transition is dead at this point. I'm just going to get into it. So, Nintendo has announced Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. It's coming to Switch in March 2025. It is one of the few Wii U games people wanted on the Switch. As far as I know, the only outstanding Wii U game. Is that right, Michael?
Yeah, definitely the only outstanding Wii game. No other Wii games that people have asked for could ever be coming to the Switch console. Can't imagine a single other game, perhaps even two other games that could be coming.
So yeah, the game does have updated visuals. They've swapped out a few character models, and it looks a little bit nicer. It also has new story additions, which anybody who's played the game, so there's like 6 people on the planet who have. There was a lot of mystery in the game about a particular hooded guy, and it looks like we get to see who that is now. The 32-player asynchronous multiplayer mode also returns, as well as the 4-player actual multiplayer mode. And yeah, March 2025, which, depending on when the Switch 2 launches, could be one of the last first-party Nintendo games on the Switch 1.
I'm
So.
more intrigued that this is definitely launching after the Switch 2 is announced, like for
Yeah.
sure. So
Because nobody cares about Xenoblade, so they just like get the shit out.
like maybe this will just generally be cross-platform because it'll be weird to launch it this late and not cross-platform. I don't know. Who knows?
I mean, like, if we assume that there's some level of backwards compatibility, they can say, like, hey, it'll also be
That's
playable
true.
on Switch 2 or whatever. So,
That's a big assumption, though.
yeah, at this point, I think it's pretty much a
Nah,
lock.
I think, yeah.
Well, so
I would hope so.
Oh no, I'll wait till later. I've got some Switch 2 speculation, but I won't get into it now because it'll just derail things further. So we'll
No, get into it. I mean, it's Xenoblade.
No,
like,
no,
Derailing the
I'll hold off.
podcast. I can't imagine that ever happening.
I'll hold off. I will say that like every time a new announcement is made about a Xenoblade re-release or something like that, every time I'm just like, oh man, maybe this is the point where I'll get into this game, and I never do. But like I'm looking at this, I'm like, okay, all the Xenoblades are finally on Switch now. This is the time to get into it, right?
I mean, this is not a terrible game to start with.
Well, I don't know if I'll
Just because
start
it's
with this.
unrelated.
I'd probably start with the first one, to be honest, because
Yeah.
why wouldn't you? But
Yeah, I mean, this game is like largely unrelated to the other games. It is related in some way, but like it can be played as a totally standalone game. There are very, very few connections, and that's a good thing and a bad thing depending on how you look at it. But it's also a very long game. In order to
Let's not hear
100%
about all
it,
of them.
you need to play 700 hours,
oh, yeah, no.
which is wild.
So it's basically an offline MMO.
It is. It started its life as an MMO, and then they ended up making it a single player game instead.
And then they remembered, oh wait, we're making this on a Nintendo platform.
I mean,
I will
it
say,
was the Wii U, so
I was watching
Any
the trailer
MMOs
and,
on Switch, actually? No, we
yeah, there's a few.
talk about derailing the
There's a bunch.
podcast.
DC, whatever that's called, the DC Hero one, where you can be a version of the Flash or Joker, or whatever that's there.
Is that on Switch? Damn.
Yeah.
I can't imagine anything worse than playing an MMO on Switch.
Yeah.
Like, that
no
sounds
joke.
awful.
The really weird thing is that game's cross-platform on all the others except Switch. So if you're on PlayStation or Xbox or PC, you can play with everyone else. But if you play the Switch version, you don't get it.
Absolute monkey paw.
That's
That's
You know,
amazing.
there's a few more. There's like Dragon Quest 10, which is on Switch, but only in Japan because it hasn't been localized. And I think there's PSO2 Cloud as well, also in Japan. So yeah, there's MMOs. And
there is an interesting one. I couldn't remember the name. It's called Skyforge. It's by a group called My Games, developed by All Lords. And the combat and story were done by Obsidian. So there's an MMO on Switch where the bulk of the combat was done by Obsidian, the folks behind Fallout New Vegas and all that sort of stuff. So,
And speaking of MMOs, I don't know if we actually talked about this previous, and it's not on the list. The Nintendo Switch Online playtest thing is also an MMO and made by Nintendo at that.
And everyone
talk about
leaked
that.
it immediately.
And not leaked
Immediately.
at all. It was completely shut in. Nobody knows anything about the game.
Everyone respected the NBA. I love that. I love that. I love gamers sometimes, man. They're the worst and also sometimes the best.
It's so funny that like they sent out a PDF like with all the NDA details. It's like, don't mention all of this. This is how the game works. And that PDF immediately leaked, which was just the funniest thing.
It's so good.
I just don't know what they like. Surely they knew, right? This is part of the marketing of it. Like it has to be.
I think so. Like there's no way in 2024 you're like, oh yeah, this is a thing that like 100,000 people can fucking download, and also you're not allowed to talk about it. The materials, like the NDA document stuff, got NDA'd, but like all of the footage and stuff since hasn't been. So I think it's just they didn't want the documents out there, and they did want the game.
Watch the guy play it live for 3 hours. Like it was not hard. It was just there.
Yeah.
Just quickly going back to Xenoblade though, like as soon as you mentioned PSO before, a switch flipped in my head, and I'm like, oh, I think that's why I like I'm interested in these games because it reminds me of OG Fantasy Star, and I love Fantasy Star on the Dreamcast because I
Yeah.
came in way late. I got it secondhand, and the servers and everything for online Dreamcast gameplay was all offline. It was all dead. But like playing single player PSO was really enjoyable to me at the time. And I look at this, I'm like, this just looks like a newer PSO. So like, is that like a fair assessment?
I would say so. Yeah. I don't know if you ever played Fantasy Star Universe, which was a PS2, but it's that basically a lot of the staff that worked on Fantasy Star Universe, which was like supposed to be an offshoot of the series but never really took off, ended up moving over to Monolith afterwards and then starting to help build Xenoblade 1 somewhat, but Xenoblade X, a lot of the staff worked on that. So and now they are just like Monolith staff in general, so they worked on Xenoblade 2 and 3 as well. So yeah, it does feel a lot like PSO in the sense that it is like fantasy-ish, but like very firmly set in sci-fi. And
science fantasy, yeah.
Yeah. So
All right.
yeah, it does have those kinds of vibes.
I'll have to finally do it. I'll
yeah.
have to get into a whole new series of games. Okay.
There's also just a surprising amount of mechs that just show up throughout the story.
Yeah.
You never expect it, and then a mech just fucking flies in and starts shooting stuff, and it's like, all right, like I've been beating up dinosaurs for the last 2 hours, but I'll take
That's
it.
the thing, though. Like,
I feel like we can star wipe to 3,000 hours later and just seeing Angelo like as an old man, like decrepit, still playing all those Xenoblade games.
Yeah, I know, right? See, I like dinosaurs and I like mechs, and then they put them both together in this, and it's just like,
yeah. I will say, like,
it doesn't require a giant keyboard controller to play.
That's true.
Yeah, I
leave that fucking thing alone.
I actually was so close to buying one like 20 years ago at Cash Converters. I'm like, it's only $20. I almost bought one.
God, so worth it. It's worth way more now.
I will say, just if you are going to play Xenoblade 2, when you get to that point, just be aware that Xenoblade 2 is the horny era of the series, in that there's some huge honkers, and the camera will very much just linger on them for like 10 seconds.
Good thing they're on Switch. You can play them in public.
I am no stranger to anime. It's fine.
Yeah. It's such a tonal difference from like you go from Xenoblade 1, which is like just a normal fucking game, and then you get to Xenoblade 2 and it's like, all right, well, like half of these characters are naked, and
so you're telling me that Xenoblade 1 is for children, Xenoblade 2 is for teenagers, and then Chronicles is for adults.
I noticed that Doja Cat's Halloween costume is not a topic of discussion today.
I wanted to bring it up, but this is a Nintendo podcast, so
Jesus Christ.
One of my students at work brought it up to me, and I'm like, it was so funny the way she brought it up. She's like, have you guys heard of this video game called Conker's Bad Fur Day? I'm like,
and you're ready, your heart sank immediately, like, where's this going?
I literally grew like 5 more gray hairs when she said that. I'm like, what are you talking about? But like, she was genuinely born in like 2003, so it made sense, but I was very disappointed. But yeah, that outfit is wild. Look it up. We probably shouldn't get into it, but look it up. It is insane.
Yeah, don't put it on the screen, Luke. We'll get banned from YouTube.
I had no intention of doing it. Because as I said, when Angelo shared, I'm like, for some reason that looks like it's AI generated. Like the still.
And I will say, there's one pick where we won't get banned, and there's another pick where we definitely will get banned.
Yeah.
It does remind me though of Heidi Klum's Halloween costume this year was E.T. But her face is in the neck, but the head of E.T. is a robotic head, so it blinks and moves its eyes and everything.
Well,
I just couldn't imagine walking around with that on my head for 5 hours.
Remember when she was like a stripper bacon or something a couple of years ago?
She was a worm. If that's the one.
Worm. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of a stripper bacon. My bad. Yeah, that was.
That
was absolutely.
Give me bacon stat.
So,
I love
the way you said a strip of bacon. I thought you said stripper bacon, and I'm like.
Yeah, for some reason I thought it was a stripper bacon. All right, I'll just quickly derail the conversation for a moment and talk about some Switch speculation. So, like, back in 2016, right?
I mean, that also moves on to our next topic. I'm just saying.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. We got the reveal video for the Switch back in like October 2016, right? The haha yeah one, and then we got the gameplay event thing in January for some people, to go visit it by invitation or whatever, and then the Switch came out in March. If we're going by that timeline this time around, I don't think the Switch 2 is coming out before July or June next year. I reckon it's probably going to be
On the one hand, right, like I
whole day
see
release
where you're
next
coming
year.
from, but like on the other, like Nintendo isn't in the position that it was then, right? In the sense that like,
Totally.
the Wii U was like failing spectacularly. The 3DS wasn't exactly setting the charts on fire. They needed to announce as early as possible so that investors didn't flee all the time. So I think
Also,
we
just
could
to
see
get
a
data about
short
how
period.
many people were interested, right? Like they had no idea, like had nothing. I feel like they don't. I agree with Ollie. I don't think they have any of those problems. I feel like we're going to see a much more compressed announce and release timeline for this console.
That's it. I don't think it'll be like March like previous. I think it'll be at the start, so like April, May of the next financial year. Just because that makes most sense for them in terms of like tracking sales and stuff, and also having the time to produce it. But we're definitely not looking at like a holiday 2025 release because that would be bad.
Well, see, I don't know,
Um,
because I feel like if they're really, because they've already said that they want to make it more difficult for scalpers to be able to scalp the product, right? So I'd imagine that they're probably just going to hold off until they just have billions of these things to actually sell and just make a huge
Yeah, which is what
wave.
I think that they've pretty much already done, or like are on the way to doing. Basically, I reckon that's basically don't release holiday 2024 because that would be a goddamn nightmare. Like, because obviously people would want it for like a holiday gift, and also scalpers will go wild. So I think they're just choosing their release
Maybe.
A to counteract that, and B not to eat into their holiday 2024 sales for Switch itself.
But also similar to
So,
what
yeah,
you guys were saying,
it'll be
like,
interesting,
I just don't think they're in a position either where they're desperate to get this thing out as soon as possible. I feel like they are
No.
holding off, and they're still releasing games specifically for
Yeah.
the Switch and not mentioning it's coming to any other Switch platforms at this point or next platforms.
My theory has been for a few weeks now that with the financials coming in on Tuesday, is when we're getting the until end of September results. If the numbers for Switch consoles sold in the last quarter was woefully under what they expected it to be, they'll probably announce Switch 2 before this fiscal report, just to help alleviate people's concerns. But if they don't, then we won't hear anything till next year. Because
and like,
there's
let's
no
be real,
I
the
don't think we're
numbers
hearing
aren't
anything
going to be
next
that
year either.
bad.
No, that's what I'm
and
saying. If they did it now, it's just because they were so far behind what they thought they were going to be, and just to keep investors happy. But if they're okay, then they're just going to ride Switch this holiday season, and we're not going to see anything at all till next year. There's no point for them to undercut themselves.
And it's also just insane that the MSRP, whatever, the price of the console has not dipped like officially since the damn thing launched. That's
Yeah.
properly insane.
Yeah.
And it's been selling
Actually
bonkers numbers
crazy.
every single year too. Like it's
That's
not like it's
so
dropped off
crazy.
significantly. Like it's still
Yeah.
selling well, which is
I can't believe that we're at that point in
I think we've-
economic history that things are not
Yeah, we've-
depreciating in price.
Every current gen console has just not had a price decrease at all. Actually,
and
bar the Switch have all had price increases.
Yeah.
So it's crazy.
The fact that it was already on like what 5-year-old hardware at the time, 6-7-year-old hardware or something like that. So it's double that now, more than double.
It's
Yeah.
probably
Yeah, when
costing
did it
them more
release?
to make the consoles now,
2017.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was already like using a Tegra chip from like what 2013 or something.
Yes,
2014, so
2015. Yeah, 2014, 2015.
It's probably costing
Yeah.
Nintendo more to make this older hardware now than it is to actually make the new consoles.
Oh,
they've
sure.
definitely like stockpiled the fuck out of Tegra chips. Like they built like a billion of those and are just like gonna coast on that for the rest of the
Switch 2 is
Switch's
going to
life.
have 2 of them. That's what makes it twice as powerful.
Mm.
Um,
Can't imagine any consoles having multiple CPUs that were in trouble. So let's not
Hey,
go down that path.
Look, PS3 had like 8 of them, right? Look how well that console did.
They called it the
what's the
emotion
best-selling
engine.
console? What's that?
Their thing for how it all came together was the emotion engine. Wasn't
Yeah,
that what
something
it was called?
stupid like that.
The
Yeah.
Emotion Engine was the PS2 graphics.
Yeah, the
chip or
PS2
whatever,
one.
wasn't it?
Oh, PS2. Sorry,
Yeah, the cell chip was the PS3.
that's it.
Yeah, the
So-
cell processor. That
Mhm.
like absolute chimera of a machine.
It's so funny because it's like easily twice as powerful as the Xbox 360, but you sure wouldn't know it playing any of the games.
Definitely not.
Such
Yeah,
a
so speaking-
convoluted system.
Speaking of the Switch 2, there's a ukulele remaster coming out at some point in the future. And when they first announced it, it was only PC that they mentioned. And now they've announced platforms, and it's, PS5 and Xbox Series X, and also Nintendo. The trailer just has the Nintendo logo, not the Nintendo Switch logo or anything like that, but just Nintendo. They also just said in the press release that it is coming to Nintendo platforms without specifically naming anything.
Yeah, Switch and 3DS, obviously.
No, Switch and Switch Lite.
Ukulele on 3DS. Oh my god.
So yeah, this is the second game to do this after Nico Dorico, The Magical World. But they replaced the trailer where they just had the Nintendo icon and just released it for the Switch. But I think we can all comfortably say that like Ukulele Remaster is not coming to the first Switch, because it would just look like the first Ukulele game.
It would just be the first Ukulele game.
And the first one didn't even run that great on the.
No, it didn't at all.
And that came out when the Switch came out too. So it's like, ooh.
Yeah. So yeah, it's almost certainly just going to come to Switch 2. What's interesting about this is that like, in order to just put the Nintendo logo and not any kind of Nintendo console logo, they have to have gotten permission from Nintendo, which I think is really interesting because it shows that like developers can clearly announce stuff for future Nintendo consoles and officially say that it's for a future Nintendo console, with Nintendo's blessing, which is interesting that we're at that point where they can say that, but the console still hasn't actually been announced. But yeah.
It's
also like
it's in the copyright crap at the bottom, the really micro text that nobody ever reads. Xbox One, Xbox Series X, Xbox Series S, and Xbox Series XS are trademarks of the Microsoft group of companies, right? Standard sort of stuff, even though it doesn't have Xbox One anywhere in that trailer, but it says it in there. For Nintendo, it just says the Nintendo logo is a trademark of Nintendo. That's it.
Sure.
Doesn't mention Switch.
Doesn't. Not lying.
Yeah, it's accurate. I also think it's hilarious. This is the second game announced this year for a remaster that was also released in 2017. The other being
it's wild to me that we're getting
Zero
remasters
Dawn.
of not current gen games, but recent, relative. I don't know, is 7 years recent anymore? I mean,
This is still on the Switch. We're still in the Switch generation.
yeah.
It's either way, it's stupid. But yeah,
Yeah, no, you're right though. Like the fucking Horizon remaster is dumb.
I feel like I
mad
probably
at
feel better
everything.
about this. Like it'll be fine, whatever. It's Ukulele. Like they tried to make it a huge thing to make it like the return of like a Banjo-Kazooie type game, and it didn't really set the world on fire. I feel better about this being available if it like came for free with like a Ukulele 3 or something, or for like extra $5, it became like cool DLC for a Ukulele 3.
Yeah.
Like it's been years now since the second game. Just make another Ukulele and just.
Especially since there's probably not going to be any kind of upgrade path for this. Like, you're just going to have to pay for.
I genuinely
again.
don't remember the second game coming out. Like,
It was
at
pretty
all.
good.
Like,
It was
you
it was
talking
pretty
about
good.
it just then, I was like, is there a second game? Why are we talking about a third game?
The Impossible Lair, the 2D one, the Donkey Kong Country. Like,
Yeah, it's just Donkey Kong
Right.
Country.
it's like it's been free on like Epic Game Store like 3 or 4 times at this point.
Yeah.
Michael just did the Goat Simulator thing. He went from 1 to 3.
But yeah, I mean, the one thing I will say that I think is good about the Ukulele remaster is that it's called Yuka Replayly, which is a real dumb name, but I kind of dig it.
Well, that's it. Like, it makes fun of itself, and it makes fun. It has fun with names as well. So, like, Replayly totally makes sense in this sense. In this case,
Yeah. But yeah, so coming to Switch 2 at some point in the future.
Like it's a lawsuit coming from Laley.
Ollie, it's coming to a Nintendo platform sometime.
It's coming to a Nintendo platform.
We
yeah.
cannot confirm nor deny.
Maybe they'll just do like a Game and Watch for it, like they did for
Just
Zelda
sounds fun.
and
Just
Mario.
blows up in your hands when you load it on.
Alrighty. I think we talked about this previously. I don't know if this was in the last episode or not, but
We
Animal
mentioned it
Crossing
a couple
Pocket
episodes
Camp.
ago.
yeah. Animal Crossing Pocket Camp is shutting down its online features soon. And we now have the Animal Crossing Pocket Camp Complete, which is a paid version of the game. You can import all of your stuff from the online version, but it just doesn't have any kind of online features.
Except for the part where it does have an online feature, but get to that in a moment.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can transfer your progress to this game. It costs $10 Australian, and it will continue costing that much until January 31st, and then it'll double, which is dumb and weird, but okay. Yeah. And you have until 5 p.m. On June 2nd Australian time to transfer your progress to the game. There's 4 years of events in the game before they loop back around, outside of the major seasonal ones like Christmas and Easter and stuff, which happen every year. And there are some new events apparently being added to this version of it as well. And it has a new location in Whistle Pass where you can meet other players. You meet the new camper cards, which is just essentially just sharing your town and stuff with other players. So yeah, I mean, Nintendo did what it said it was going to do. It created an offline version of the game so that the game isn't totally inaccessible for the rest of time. I think having the like 2-tiered pay $10 and then pay $20 is just dumb.
I feel like
just make it $10.
If you dumped more than $10 into the game, you should get it. You should get it for free. I think that's a real punch in the dick for anyone that's dumped money into the game.
Yeah. But I mean, you know, as I said, it is good that it's not just being lost to time like other Nintendo mobile games. But you know, it is what it is, right? Like,
it's just another example of what I mentioned before. Like, to a degree, like Nintendo understands how mobile gaming can work and how it can work for them. So it is great that they're not just nuking this game and pretend like it didn't exist or anything like that. They are providing a solution. Might not be the best solution, but it's a solution nonetheless. And like, if you want a better Animal Crossing game, there was one that came out 4 years ago on Switch that everyone loved. So there is that.
But good on no, this is terrible. I hate capitalism, but good on Nintendo for like getting $10 out of all their most dedicated players on mobile, right? Because like the people that are going to pay for this are the people that already spend a whole bunch of money on the game. So one last dying gasp of the game to get $10 out of those players again. Like, I mean, go off, I guess.
But at least like all their progress carries over, right? So like, it's $10, but it's basically $10 for preserving it. It's not $10 for a subscription, like the Pokemon Bank or whatever it was. Did like if you wanted to keep all your Pokemon and transfer across generations, you have to subscribe. If you want to store them online, it's none of that rubbish. It's like, okay, give us one last $10, and we'll kind of leave you alone, but also maybe another $20 on top of that.
Well, depending on when you buy it, yeah.
True.
Maybe $10 or it could be $20. Yeah, I mean, you're right. It is just like paying $10 to like have like, hey, you don't have to lose all of your shit. So for the people who care, right? It's probably a good deal, right? But
we'll see, right? Because like in 5 years, is it still going to be available? Because like whenever a new phone comes out, they have to provide an updated version of that. And like in 5 years' time, who knows if it'll be around then. So if you want it in 5 years, just don't update your phone firmware in that case or whatever.
Yeah.
Like there are plenty of games that aren't compatible with current versions of iOS that came out 10 years ago.
But notably no Nintendo ones. I mean, they've shut most of them down, but the fact that like Super Mario Run is still supported and even still getting events weirdly years after the fact is...
I love when that game gets an update and you're like, oh, an update for it. It's like, oh, we've fixed something, the better experience or whatever. It's like, you haven't added a new piece of content to this game in like 6 years now, apart from
except they have. That's the thing, right? Is that
they've added like some random stickers and random little objects for your fake town that you can only have like 8 things in anyway. But they're not putting new levels in. The whole thing people want them to do with that game is put more levels in, and that's the thing they're not doing.
Well, yeah, because that actually costs development money. They can just have like one dude like make like a sticker or a statue or whatever. Like that's fine. Takes them like 20 minutes each week. But you know, actually making new levels requires level designers, and that's just not going to happen. So
Quick update on that. I finally got my password situation fixed about a month ago, and I was like, "Oh boy, I'm gonna play some Mario Run." Load up the first level, and I was like, and then I just closed it and didn't open it back up.
yeah,
I think Mario
good
Run's
like
a great
that.
little game when you've just got like 5 minutes to kill and you just load into it.
It's like
But
if
I
you're
just
just
hate
like
the
on
fact
the
that it-
tram or whatever, right? Like just
Yeah.
knock out a level or two.
But I hate the fact that it requires internet connection to run.
Yeah,
Pun
Look,
not intended.
If you get the Delta app, there are better Mario games to play on your phone. Just gonna say that.
But you can't play it one-handed while eating an apple.
that's true. And you
I mean,
can't.
yeah, that's what I
Mario
do
Run.
one-handed. Yes, is eat an apple.
Jesus. Alrighty. There's a couple of remasters, I guess. I mean, is it a remaster really? Star Wars Episode 1 Jedi Power Battles is coming to Switch in January 2025, as well as other consoles as well. I think it's other consoles, right? It's not just Switch.
Yeah, it's all
I
of
know
them. Same as
they're weird
same
about
as
that
normal.
sometimes. So yeah, it says in our notes here that Luke wrote for us. Best known as a PS1 title, there was a Dreamcast release and a unique GBA version. Luke, tell me about the GBA version.
It's essentially same name, completely different game. It's
Interesting.
one of
Classic.
I
those.
mean, that was
It's the way it was back then. But it's not great. It's not a good game. Period. So yeah, it's just one of those weird scenarios where they took it as a top-down type of experience. It's like Resident Evil on Game Boy is not really Resident Evil, but you know that sort of vibe. Honestly, the one that people know is the PS1 game because it was so everywhere. But the Dreamcast version is the actual best version of this game. So.
Yeah. Well, until January, in which case the Switch version, well, probably not the Switch version, the PS5 version will be the best version of the game.
Given that this group also fucked up the Battlefront collection to the point where it's hardly playable on some platforms, I will probably still say the Dreamcast version is probably the best version of this game. So
Yeah. So yeah, this is going to offer modern controls and updated visuals. There's also additional characters being added, like the Tusken Raider. And yeah, it's coming out January 23rd, 2025. Did anybody play this when they were younger? I feel like the
played it at
PS1
a
is kind of
friend's house, but
where,
I
anyway,
mean, even the title just makes it sound like a boring game. Jedi Power
Yeah.
Battles. Like,
Yeah.
what is that?
of all of the like game titles that they've had for like Star Wars games, this is probably the least interesting one.
Like, I'd argue it's worse than Attack of the Clones.
Yes.
Jedi Power Battles.
see, what's even stupider is it's called Jedi Power Battles, but then you can play as Padme Amidala. It's like
Yeah.
she's not a fucking Jedi.
I mean, she gave birth to a couple, I guess.
Yeah,
She
but
may
you
or
can
may
also
not
play
have
as-
had force powers while she was
Spoilers.
pregnant, so-
God.
Oh yeah,
But you
sorry.
can also play as Captain Panaka, the captain of a guard, who's played by the the Kiwi actor in 2 and 3, and then a Tusken Raider. I don't think there are Jedi Tusken Raiders, but
Wait,
you know,
Are you getting mixed up with Captain Typho, who Jay Lagaya played? I think you are.
yeah. So he was 2 and 3.
Panaka was in
the
episode
first
1.
Yeah. sorry.
Actually, you'll find it was Panaka who was with her in episode 1 on the
But
assault
he-
on Naboo.
He's definitely not a Jedi. So it's just weird that.
God.
And then you can play as Darth Maul. It's like I'm pretty sure Darth Maul's not a Jedi.
Well, he's not a Jedi.
I mean, he's exactly not a Jedi.
He's
Is he?
exactly not that.
Yeah.
I
mean-
love the key art for this because like on the trailer, for example, or I'm guessing it's the cover for the game. Like everything is illustrated and it looks like it's hand drawn, but then you look at their faces, Mace Windu and Obi-Wan Kenobi, and they're very clearly photographed or just redrawn over a photograph or something.
Yeah.
It just so stands out so badly. I love it.
It does. But yeah, so that's the thing. Anybody who cares about that game, I'm sure there'll be like a bunch of people who are like, "Oh, I love this on the PS1," and then they actually play it again, and it's like, "Wow, this is kind of shit," because that seems to be how most of these things go. But yeah, I mean, it looks like a PS1 game. Not quite as fun looking as Croc, but
It looks like a PS1 game.
it does. Even with these like enhanced visuals, I mean, like that's a PS1 game. Let's be real.
Perfect for a Nintendo platform.
Yeah. Anyway, there's another game from Aspire, and that's the Tomb Raider 4 to 6 remastered collection. It's also coming in 2025. After they previously did the remastered collection of 1 to 3, which released earlier this year, I want to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this was announced the day after the Star Wars game. Includes The Last Revelation, Chronicles, and The Angel of Darkness, which was very popular but not very good. So it'll be interesting to see Angel of Darkness.
Angel of Darkness
reworked.
basically took the look of Lara Croft from the second Angelina Jolie movie.
Yeah.
And said, we'll make a game based around this. And it's like, okay, it's not really what people want, but sure.
It's also a darker game, despite the fact that it's called Darkness. But like internally, it's a bit darker as well, isn't it?
Yeah. So yeah, like the first Tomb Raider collection, you can swap between the old look and the new look. Although, given how some of these games look, I don't know why you would go back to the old one, but you can do that. And there's a new control scheme. So yeah. Angel of Darkness was the end of the second trilogy of games. And then there was the standalone Underworld game on the Wii. And then they did the reboot trilogy, which is kind of still going because they made a sequel animated series. So
yeah, the Netflix series just released. What I find weird about this is these games weren't actually called Tomb Raider 4, 5, 6. It wasn't Tomb Raider 4, The Last Revelation. It was just Tomb Raider, The Last Revelation. This is the first time they've ever been given this numerical identifier, which is like a weird thing to do. But, you know, that's the thing. But then also, there's 3 Game Boy titles. There's 2 Game Boy Color and 1 Game Boy Advance game. And the Game Boy Advance game was made by Ubisoft, of all people. But those aren't being included because they were all released in between these games. They're not being included in this collection, which is kind of... I get why, but it's like, you really should, because you're not going to release them on their own.
well, they might.
Tomb Raider, the Game Boy collection.
I mean, you know, Konami's been doing it.
Yeah, but they're
Capcom's been
good
doing
games. They're still good games.
Yeah,
I will say
nobody's
that
going to pay money for the Game Boy
No.
Color.
what I find looking at all this news is like the Aspire stuff, especially Alamo. It's like all this feels like it was stuff from a Nintendo Direct that just didn't have a Nintendo Direct. It's like this is the sort of stuff that would have been announced in a Direct.
Yeah, there's been a lot of that lately. Like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, we also have a couple things, like with the new Nintendo Switch Online games, which I'm smoothly transitioning into. So
This episode's all been about those smooth transitions.
it has been. We're doing really well. Banjo-Tooie is coming to Switch next week, this coming week.
No, it's already out. That's just the headline from the article.
I couldn't remember when it was. Anyway, Banjo-Tooie is out now on Nintendo Switch Online, and it came almost exactly 2 years after the first game. It's Banjo-Tooie.
Isn't this
I'm
the
watching
one
the
you don't
trailer,
like?
and the music is a fucking bop. God damn, it's so good.
So yeah, there's only one other Banjo game that could potentially come to the service rather, and that is Grunty's Revenge on the Game Boy Advance, which is a better game than most people give credit for.
Wasn't Banjo Pilot GBA?
I don't even know what Banjo Pilot
Is
is.
that the one that was
It's-
cancelled?
No, it released.
Oh no,
There's
yeah,
five,
you're right.
There's 5 Banjo games.
2005. What was it on? Game Boy Advance. Yeah, you're right.
There you go.
That's why I wrote
mean-
this.
I don't remember it being a thing that anyone talked about.
Yeah.
No, because it wasn't that great. Because it was basically Diddy Kong Racing, but with just Banjo characters.
It was developed by Rare and published by DHQ.
Yeah, this is when
Yeah.
they were after they bought out by Microsoft.
Hmm.
Anyway, so yeah, those two are still not on the servers. I have mixed feelings about Banjo-Tooie because I feel like the moveset is quite good, but the actual game is just terrible. I do not like Banjo-Tooie at all. I think it's probably the worst of the platformer Banjo games.
We've had.
I
This
think it's worse than
conversation
Nuts and Bolts by a pretty wide margin. So yeah,
That's a wild thing to say.
no, Nuts and Bolts is a really good game. It is.
Sure, it's not a Banjo game.
It's not a great Banjo game, but it's a better game than Banjo-Tooie.
So what you're saying is mechanically,
As-
Nuts and Bolts is good.
Yeah, exactly. That was a good joke. Thank you. Anyway, another thing that happened was that they added Turok 2 and Shadow Man to the mature Nintendo Switch Online N64 app. Which, sure. And then you don't have to pay for the remastered-ish versions of those, so yeah. Also,
Which is kind of
Banjo-Tooie has a
funny.
widescreen mode, which is fun.
Yeah, it's
that's
just like
still a bad
GoldenEye
game.
has the actual widescreen support on it and Perfect Dark.
Is that because the re-releases of the XBLA versions, which had widescreen and stuff in them?
No, the game has widescreen support. They all do.
Oh,
Like in the 64. Yeah.
oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
I think the original Banjo didn't have.
No, I didn't think so.
Well,
Banjo
Banjo
1 does.
Banjo-Tooie, Banjo-Tooie, GoldenEye, and Perfect Dark all had widescreen support.
Yeah.
So wait, so GoldenEye had it on the N64, but then Banjo-Kazooie didn't, even though they came out like a year later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's weird.
It probably started development well beforehand. But yeah,
Alright, that's strange. Okay.
it is very weird. But yeah, so
I mean, look,
if you're-
I've always wanted to play through Banjo-Tooie. I remember I hired it because I got Banjo-Kazooie for my 10th birthday. And then when Banjo-Tooie came out, I was super pumped for it, but I could only hire it because it was already pretty expensive at that point as well. And we just didn't have the cash. So I hired it, and then I just didn't really play it all that much when I hired it. And I felt kind of bad. And then when it came out on XBLA, I bought it just out of obligation because I was super into it at the time. And then again, I just didn't finish it. So maybe I'll finally finish it, and then I will swear at Ollie and tell him he's wrong. We'll see.
I'm not though. Like it. Oh, look, I think I have no issues with like the story or like the moveset or like even the visuals and the soundtrack are really, really good. It's just like the main quest design is just so frustrating. Like you do so much backtracking and
That's
Yeah,
what rings in
it's-
my mind is I didn't enjoy.
It's the Donkey Kong
actual
64 school of platforming.
exactly.
Yeah, I didn't enjoy the
yeah.
levels and the gameplay at the time. Well, the gameplay.
It also had the
Right.
issue of being one of the later console games from Rare. So it was probably a little bit too ambitious for the hardware. So it does have some performance
Yeah.
issues at times. So
But yeah, there's so much stuff that's like, you know, there's like cross-world events, right? Where you have to like do something in one world and then go to another world and then do something there. And then you can go back to the first world to get a single collectible. And it's like, just why? Like it's really frustrating with the backtracking
That's totally fair.
and stuff like that.
basically, it's Metroidvania gameplay in a 3D platformer, which
Yeah, but with like annoying load times and transitions and animations and stuff.
It's
You're
funny that
absolutely. Oh, go on.
I was gonna say it's just funny that half of the Rare games from the 64 era are now on the app.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say an absolutely wild re-release that should definitely happen. Like, not even joking. Like, should absolutely happen. Should be revived from the vaults. Is Star Fox Adventure. I feel like that would actually be. It'd probably like just completely fall flat, but it'd be so cool to actually see that in a modern context. Because from what I remember, like the game looked really good. It controlled
Yeah.
pretty tightly. I think the
I
game was
unironically
kind of,
enjoy the shit out of that game.
yeah.
To me,
but I
that
played
is
I played
the
like
best
20
Star
years
Fox
ago.
game.
I played it like 20 years ago, so I don't again, like it was 20 years ago, right? Like in modern context, who knows if it'll stack up? But I feel like that game should absolutely there should be a political movement to bring that game back.
How about
We should all
catch
be in
this?
the
This is a wild idea. Any GameCube games, just any of them.
Hey, look, we got Metroid. We got Metroid 1, Metroid
I-
Prime 1.
I legit thought for a
Yeah,
second
to
you
be
were gonna
fair-
say bring back Dinosaur Planet.
Yeah.
We got Metroid 1, and they did it in an absolutely incredible way. So, like, I can't complain about that. Metroid Prime
wonder-
Remastered is 11 out of 10.
I wonder if someone got their hands on a dev build of Dinosaur Planet.
I'm pretty sure
wait,
there's
yeah.
definitely one out there. Yeah.
64
Yeah.
build.
I mean, I can't think of any other standout GameCube games that have yet to come to the Switch. So
None. No, can't think of any. Not a single one.
Not a single one. None that have been remastered on other consoles.
No.
No, nothing at all.
I will say so. Back to like Shadow Man. I love Shadow Man. I have fond memories of it, but I hate the fact that the sequel was relegated to PS2 and
Yeah.
only ever PS2.
I mean,
I
maybe
didn't
they'll
ever
change
played
in
it.
the future.
Well, I didn't have a PS2 when they were out. I got mine after the PS3. I started getting my PS2 games when the PS3 launched because I got the one with the PS2 hardware in it. So I started playing some of the games then, and this was just never around. So I've never played it, and I love the first game, but yeah, just never played it.
Yeah, so there was a dump of Dinosaur Planet. I found it here. There's a post on Reddit, but the link that links to the actual download file is nuked. Of course.
Of course.
Yeah, it wasn't hard to find. Literally just was like the top thing. I literally just searched Dinosaur Planet N64 build, so it's there. So if any listeners want to dig into that and find something, I'll post it in our Slack, in our Discord.
The other thing too with the Turok games is Turok 1, 2, and 3 have all been remastered by Night Dive, who own the rights for the video games. But only Turok 1 and 2 are on the app. So we still have 3 to come, and then Rage Wars, which was the weird multiplayer focused Turok.
Yeah.
And then the last
I think
Turok
is-
game was Evolution, which sucked.
What I think is interesting about this in particular is that, like, it shows that, like, Nintendo must pay pretty decently for, like, the licenses to these games to put them on NSO, because, like, otherwise, like, why would you undercut potential sales, right? Like, they have to be getting a decent amount of money from it, because otherwise people could just spend $15 and get, you know, the
I guess
remastered
it
versions
is
or
also
whatever.
multi-platform, right? So if you don't have a Nintendo platform, you're not getting it on NSO. So
I was legit the other day thinking, it's like, Turok 1's on the 64 app, but I like Turok 2 more than Turok 1. And I was thinking of buying it, and then they had the bundle of all 3 games for like $90. And I'm like, yeah, no, I don't need them that badly. And then like 3 days later, they announced 2 was coming to the app, and I'm like, haha, it works out for me. So
That's what I'm saying, right? Is that, like, you know, if you don't care that much and just want to play Turok, like, you would just not buy it. You would just play it on Switch. So yeah, interesting.
I
From
do
an
love that
economics
we're getting a heap
perspective.
of Acclaim games now on the 64,
Mm.
which I think is great. And it's interesting, like, again, the Turok and the Shadow Man, the video game licenses are Night Dive, and then Iggy's Wrecking Balls, whatever it's called, and then Extreme G, they're done by Lighthouse something or other. They own them, so the rights are all over the place for the Acclaim stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm still waiting on Armor Marines, which is basically Helldivers before Helldivers was a thing, because both of those are, you know, weird takes on Starship Troopers.
Wow, so I'm still digging into Dinosaur Planet. A Dinosaur Planet prototype soundtrack was uploaded to archive.org.
Wow.
That's cool.
That's cool.
Yeah, so the website 64history.net is the host of the first link that I found on Reddit, but the site's gone now. So I'm trying to find other ones. I think there is a ROM available on archive.org. I might give that a whirl later on.
there is definitely a ROM available on archive.org.
Yeah. Oh,
Without
it's
a
right
doubt.
here. It's right here. I just can't load it up at the moment. So, but I'm genuinely very interested to see what this game actually looks like, what it plays like. This and like Eternal Darkness, when they were originally N64 games, like, I don't know, man, they look so cool.
Oh, Eternal Darkness. Don't get me started.
Yeah, I know, right?
Alrighty, let's move on to the games that we're playing. I'll go first just because I've only got a couple. I have been playing the shit out of Dragon Age: The Veilguard. I played that. Well, I didn't play it for review because I didn't review it. I just played it ahead of launch. And yeah, it's really, really good. Enjoyed most of it, pretty much all of it. And I've done every single quest in the game. So yeah, big fan. And I've also been playing Pokemon TCG Pocket, which only came out a few days ago. So that's quite fun.
Wait, Ollie, you're telling me you're playing a Pokemon game that's also a card game that's also digital? I
know.
wouldn't have imagined those three elements would line up for you in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, it's like I have a long history of exactly that. But no, I mean TCG Pocket it's fine. I think the changes that they've made to the format to make it faster and more appropriate for mobile is good. So, enjoying it.
I saw some random person saying, there's a mobile sensor tower, I think they're called. They're like, oh, we know how much the people are making. And it's like, no, you don't. You're guessing. But they
kind of do know because they install malware on people's phones so that they can figure out how much they're spending on Android.
But they reckon over the first 48 hours, this game's made something like $4 million. So
I just want to preface that previous statement with allegedly, just in case they decide to listen in because I can't afford a lawsuit right now.
Yeah, only sue him when he can afford it.
Yeah. Right now. In a week, go for it.
Just wait until I win the Powerball and then, sue me if you want. But for now, allegedly, I don't know for sure that that's what they do. But that is my firmly held belief. And under Australian defamation law, firmly held belief is one of the defenses for defamation. So, anyway, Michael, what have you been playing?
What we're playing.
Same as you, some more Hell Let Loose. Satisfactory still firmly has me in its grips. I think I'm like 80, 90 hours in at this point with my mate. It's very, very fun. But I did play through a little neat indie game that's like $4.50 on Steam called Nodebuster, which is pretty fun. Sort of like, how do you describe it? It's sort of like a cookie clicker almost, but not has that same type of like dopamine drive. As you upgrade that's just look it up. It's $4.50. It's super cheap. It's not really a cookie clicker. It's not really a clicker game, but it sort of is. But yeah, it gets you hooked. It's enjoyable. It has overwhelmingly positive on Steam. I reckon that's probably a little bit too high. I don't know why it has that high of a rating.
I think a bunch of trading cards because that'll be it.
No, I don't think it gives any actually at all.
Oh, that's surprising.
The end game is sort of like really not well thought out, like at all. But the core it's like the guy's first game that he made. So if this is his first game, I'm excited to see what he does next because it's very good and very much, like I said, gets the brain excellence going. Anyway, that's me.
It looks like the reason for most of the positive reviews is because some sort of YouTuber or content creator covered it.
Right. Okay. There you go.
Let's take a look. Somebody called Real Civil Engineer who has 2.32 million subscribers. So.
Oh, interesting. I actually do know who that YouTuber is.
Yeah.
Are you one of these people that are playing it because they covered it?
No, I didn't even know they covered it.
Yeah. Angelo, what have you been up to lately?
Sorry, I had myself muted because I realized that my keyboard just click-clacks really, really loudly. I've got to sort that out. I've been playing Super Mario RPG again. I keep falling in and out of that game. I'm in for a long haul now. I want to finally get this game done because I am enjoying it. So it's been my sleepy bedtime game.
Like I say, in it for the long haul, and it's like a 9-hour game at most.
I know. I say long haul, but like I literally started it almost a year ago. So, and I'm only like 30% through it still. So
this is the remake, I assume.
Yeah. It just takes me so long to play 3 games these days. I take forever actually finishing a game, which is really disappointing. And I started playing Black Ops 6 when that came out. I was actually, this is the thing, when it comes to Call of Duty games, like I just do not care about them until about 2 or 3 days before they release. And then I'm like, oh boy, a new Call of Duty game's on the horizon. I can't wait to jump in for like 3 or 4 weeks. So yeah, that's me for the next little while, just enjoying Black Ops. It's fun. It's Call of Duty. You know exactly what you're going to get for the most part. I mean, people knew exactly what they were going to get for Modern Warfare 3, and then they hated it still. So there is that. But yeah, I'd stay very far away from Warzone. I really do not like Warzone, but I am enjoying the multiplayer, just deathmatch and things in blobs. And the story seems okay so far. I'm not really enjoying the spy type stuff. Like there are some levels where you're just having to sneak around and take photos and listen into conversations and talk to people, and I'm like, this is not shooting.
The exact opposite of what a Call of Duty game should be about.
Exactly, it is not the shooting bits that I just want to do. I just want to kill people. That's
like
what I'm
playing a
for.
Splinter Cell game and
Gun-
Sam Fisher has to crochet a map.
Gun goes pew pew, dopamine go up, happy.
Exactly. That's exactly it. That's the formula. I don't know why they stray from that sometimes. Anyway, that is me.
Alrighty, and Luke, you got quite a list here, so tell us
Yeah,
what you've been
'cause
playing.
That's all I've been doing. So I also played through Dragon Age Review. I really enjoyed it. My biggest gripe is just that the game's like, oh, this is super important. It's going to happen right now. And then you can piss around for half a day doing whatever you want. So the game has no actual impact in terms of time-based things.
My biggest gripe, sorry, just while we're on gripes in that game, is that like the voice actor for Nev sounds like she just does not want to be there. Like she
there
just
are
is.
times when her voice is great, and then times when it's like
Yeah.
phoned in.
When she
or a
actually
completely
puts
different
emotion
accent.
into it, it's like, damn, this is really good. And then like 90% of the time, it's like it's just a flat performance with nothing there, which is a shame. But yeah, go on.
I also played through Horizon Remastered, which I didn't play through the whole thing start to finish because I had a bunch of PS4 saves on the console, and because you can import your PS4 saves into that game, I was able to jump in and play giant chunks of it without having to go through all the tutorial bullshit again. That was fine. It doesn't need to exist. It's a completely pointless release. It also has issues graphically. It's like the whole thing is it's supposed to look great on PS5, and there are times when textures don't load and you can see through objects because it hasn't loaded in the textures. So it's weird. I also got to play through the Lego Horizons Adventures game up at PlayStation. They invited me up for that one, and that was fun. And I'm very happy with that one because it's a Lego game where the world is Lego, not just like Lego stuck onto regular things. And also played through the Remastering Saga 2 remake on PS5, which was fun, and then Neva from Devolver, which is.
I'm really surprised that you not only played but enjoyed Romancing Saga 2, because that does not seem like your kind of game to me.
Yeah.
It's generally not.
Yeah,
because
who are you?
I'm not a massive JRPG gamer person. But this one just had enough. Like I wish, it wasn't just fast traveling via a map to every location. I wish you could walk around the world a little bit. And I wish that you weren't automatically fucking fast forwarded in time randomly. Like I did it one time, I died in combat, and it's like a new king has been selected. I'm like, oh well, that makes sense. I died. But then, I finished this hard boss fight and I was like, yes. And he goes, 56 years later. I'm like, what do you mean 56 years later? What the fuck? I just beat this guy. What? So stuff like that pissed me off. But the actual combat, the sort of mechanics of building and overseeing the city, I really liked it. But yes, it wasn't perfect. But for what, remaking of a 1992 Super Nintendo game, it's done pretty well. So.
Wow. So what you're saying is that we're entering the Luke JRPG era, and
God, no.
we can expect to see more of this in the future.
I own all the Xenoblade games that are currently on Switch, and I've not played them because I'm like, I'll buy them and I'll play them, and I just never get around to it because I'm like, they're JRPGs. And I tried on the Wii with the first one, and it's just so convoluted.
Well, the first one is a bit convoluted, yeah. The remaster was good for that because it actually gave direction and map markers and stuff, which the original did not have. So
There's something that Luke
Alrighty.
said before that I want to make an addition to my just general online internet bio. I'm just going to put Angelo Valdivia, and then he's going to put has issues graphically. It's such a great line.
Oh my god.
Great.
Star wipe.
All right, let's get stuck into Nintendo 20 questions. Angelo, what were you gonna say?
So no. I was literally about to ask the first question. I thought that was the transition there. Sorry.
Sure.
Please.
No, it's fine. That's what we'll do.
Yeah.
I've got the game this week, so Yeah, ask your questions.
Do it, Angelo. Do your thing, then I'll do my thing, and then we'll be disappointed with each other. Continue.
Did the game release in the 2010s?
It did not release in the 2010s.
Did the game release on or after January 1st, 2000?
No, it did not.
It's just the way he says it is so offensive.
Was this game released in the 1990s?
This game was released in the 1990s.
Okay. Game Boy, Game Boy Color, NES, SNES, 64. Virtual Boy.
Was it a handheld game?
It was a handheld game.
Okay.
Still is.
Hmm.
Didn't stop being a handheld game. I just mean just by the transitive property of something was and is.
Yeah. It's a game you could.
It didn't grow up and like go through some type of transformation.
Yeah.
Handheld game. Go.
As a handheld game, was it released on a color-based system?
It was released on a color-based system.
Oh,
Okay, that severely like cuts down the amount of games.
Can we just clarify, when you say color-based system, Angela, are you referring to has color in the name and not like a shade of green being a color?
Yeah.
I'm saying it's a system based around the entire premise of having colors on it.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah.
Not just a single color, red perhaps.
Oh god, Nintendo, why did you do this to us 30 years ago? It's still causing problems.
Oh my god.
I'm gonna assume it came out for Game Boy Color.
Okay, I think that's fair. Was this game developed in Japan?
This game was not developed in Japan.
Was this game published by Nintendo?
The game was not published by Nintendo.
Ooh, I think it's gonna be a tricky one.
Part of me is thinking Conker's Pocket Tales. So I think THQ published that one.
That was like 2000 though, right?
I was also thinking, I'm pretty sure there was a Turok Game Boy Color game,
Yeah.
and Turok was also on the menu today.
Was that one also Seeds of Evil? Came out around the same time.
I don't remember. I could even be wrong. I just remember that. I have a distinct memory of being like a Turok Game Boy Color cartridge, but that could just be a false memory.
Could ask if it was its own standalone series on the Game Boy, rather than being like a wider series that was also on.
We could also just ask if it's part of a series and just get that out of the way, because that's a good question.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Was this game part of a series?
This game is part of a series.
Cool.
Is the series still going today?
I mean, Define's still going, I guess.
Has it had a new entry in the last 5 years?
5 years.
No, it has not had. It has not had a.
Has that
release
knocked
in
out
the
some
last
things like
5 years.
Tony Hawk and
Well,
been a few rally games?
I guess. Has Tony Hawk had a new game though? Is a remaster canon as a new game?
Tony Hawk Pro Skater 5.
Does
Came out in
that come out in the past 5? What? Really? I'm having a stroke?
Maybe
We're
it was
both having a stroke.
maybe it was a few years earlier, but it's definitely recent. It was Xbox One.
Yeah, but see, that's my point. Is 5 years ago like a recent release? Like that's a whole retro generation.
Okay, Pro Skater 5 is 2015.
Oh
Okay.
my god, that was 9 years ago.
Yeah.
That was a whole year 3 child away.
I just remember being at E3
was this-
and they wanted to tell me about that game, but didn't want to tell me what that game was until I was in the room. And then they were
Jesus.
disappointed I wasn't super excited. The fact that it was Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5.
Was this game developed in North America?
This game was not developed.
Okay.
Just trying to think.
Part of
Okay.
a series.
I'm thinking about if we try and nail down genre. Is this game a platformer?
I wouldn't say it's a platformer, no.
Okay. Does it play from a side-scrolling perspective?
It does not play from a side-scrolling perspective.
Oh, interesting.
So it could be one of those like Mode 7 racing type games. It could be a puzzle game.
Could just be like a top-down perspective game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could also be the rare isometric one though that was on Game Boy.
Mm-hmm.
Could ask if it's a licensed game. Was this game licensed or part of a licensed?
No. It's not a licensed game.
There we go. That's the sentence I was looking for.
How many questions do we have left?
6 questions and a guess.
Does this game have shooting?
Shooting.
Yeah, like you shoot a gun or like a projectile weapon, a laser beam.
Yeah, it has shooting then. It's a very broad definition of shooting that you've given me, but yes, it has shooting.
The way you said that, does this game have shooting?
Because the way Ollie's answered it makes me think that you shoot something that's not a traditional. Like you're using a slingshot to shoot nuts or something.
Next time you see
Yeah.
that sheriff, shoot him. I smile. Oh.
Um,
And the hard thing about Game Boy Color games is that so many of them came out like very late 90s, then a ton of them in the early 2000s, and like I'm really
Yeah.
struggling to remember like when things came out.
the other problem too is that if you think it could be an entry in this series. The series will be one thing on console, but the Game Boy will be completely different. Same name, different gameplay type or presentation. So
That's
Like,
why I
when-
was wondering if it was worth asking if it was like a series or a game that was specific to the platform rather than one that was like cross-platform.
Yeah. It came out then. It's like an early Game Boy Color game.
was it? Is this game unique to the platform?
Oh, that's a question. Do you mean like has it been on any other platforms?
So what I mean is, there's a game that did it, but like the Jedi Power Battles, there's the console version and a Game Boy version. The Game Boy's unique.
Yeah.
It's not
Not,
like
not a multi-platform.
Yeah, right.
release.
it's not like a port to Game Boy.
It isn't.
but
It
it's
isn't
like
the
its own
same game,
version.
just on Game Boy. It's like it's own like thing.
It's its own thing. It's not like
Okay.
a weird bastardized version of another game or anything like that.
Okay.
That also sort of brings it down to mean that it's not the developer didn't just like make a stupid watered down version of the console game. They've made a bespoke version.
I think Luke might be right. It might be Conker's Lucky Tales.
Pocket Tales.
Pocket Tales, sorry. Because Lucky Tales was the
Yeah, the
64.
Xbox thing.
Yeah, because it would make sense because that would have been developed in Europe, in England, and it's its own standalone release. I'm just not sure when it came out. I thought it was in 2000, but I might be remembering playing it in 2000 because a friend had it and I borrowed it from him. So
Well, when
it
did
might have been
Conkers come out? That came out in 2000 or 99?
That was 2000.
So it must have come out after that, surely.
Pocket Tales came out first.
Yeah, it came out first.
Oh, did it? Oh,
Yeah, because
that's why-
Lucky Tales was it was supposed to be like Banjo Kazooie, and everyone was like, "Oh, it's just another Banjo Kazooie like." So then they changed it to be.
Yeah,
more
right,
gratuitous.
okay. All right, cool.
They also did
Man, I
it
do
with
not
Pocket
remember that
Tales
at
too.
all.
Yeah. Pocket Tales was okay.
Was this game developed by Rare?
I was just about to ask the exact same question. I was like, let's just get cut to the chase.
This game was developed by Rare.
Yeah,
Okay, cool, there you go.
It's totally
Easy.
That, it's totally that.
Yeah,
Unless Perfect Dark was also released for Game Boy Color.
yeah.
That one had to have been 2000 because the N64 release came out in 2000, right? They would have released that side by side. There's no way that came out before.
Yeah.
Dark.
I honestly don't remember, but I also think we've had it on Game Boy before.
All right. Well, how many questions do we have left?
3 and a guess.
Do you use a slingshot in this game?
You do use a slingshot in this game
Okay, there you go.
There we go. We
to
did it.
shoot stuff.
I mean, that's 100% a fair answer to my question. And it's definitely you definitely shoot things.
So good. This was yours, Luke. You can go for it.
Yeah.
Alright. Is this game Conker's Pocket Tales?
Alrighty. So developed by Rare, released in June and July of 1999 in North America and Europe respectively, but in most places in Australia not released until January or February in 2000.
Ah, there we go.
This is Conker's Pocket Tales.
Yeah.
I picked this without knowing that we would talk so much about Conkers today. I was not expecting that to be a big thing.
That's
I picked
hilarious.
this one because it was a really interesting game in that it was one of the very few dual format games, which means that even though it is a Game Boy Color game, ostensibly, you can put it into an original Game Boy and get mostly the same experience. There's some stuff that's a little bit different, but for the
Became
most
one of
part,
those
it's playable.
black normal Game Boy carts and not the actual Game Boy Color cart. Like they're like Tetris DX.
Yeah, or Pokemon Gold and Silver, which were
Oh, yeah.
also dual format. Yeah, I played this when I was a kid, and I thought it was really interesting. And
Yeah,
then
it's fun.
when we had an N64, I was like, oh yeah,
Little Ollie was
Conker's
very
Bad.
surprised when he played the 64
Yeah.
Conker.
I convinced my mum because like it was like Conker's Bad Fur Day, and I was like, oh look, you've seen me playing this cute little squirrel game on the Game Boy. It'll just be like that, and then we
What
The
is that
rating
thing
didn't-
doing to the
rating
flower?
didn't give it away.
the rating did not give it away. This was back before they told you why it was rated like that. It was just like, oh yeah, this is really rated M or PG or whatever. So
Amazing.
it was like, it could have been anything. But yeah,
I gotta say,
Um,
back to what I was saying before, like Game Boy Color's a great pick for this series because it really is at the end and the beginning of two different like decades, and it's really brutal to try and remember like what came out when.
yeah. Because there are quite a few games that did come out in like '99, but then a lot of games that came out in 2001 as well. So yeah, as I said, I wasn't expecting to that we would have talked so much about Conkers today. But I mean, that Halloween costume on everybody's mind. So
For context, Angelo used Conker's Bad Fur Day on the second time we ever did Nintendo 20 Questions. And Perfect Dark was done back in May of 2022.
yeah, eventually we'll get through all the
Conker's-
rare games.
Conker's Bad Fur Day has a really great soundtrack. Outside of the Great Mighty Pooh, like I still every now and again I still get the bullfighting music stuck in my head. It's so good. But yeah, I
Yeah.
don't remember a whole lot about Conker's Lucky Tales. I just remember enjoying it as a Game Boy game. It was
You don't even remember its name because you keep saying Lucky Tales, and it's
Oh,
not
sorry,
that.
I do. It's because sorry, I've got Lucky's Tale in my head as well,
Yeah.
and then Conker's Lucky Tales, and then Conker's Pocket Tales.
Yeah,
It's like
'cause-
they're all just like mesh into one grey
Because
block.
they made Lucky Tale, which is a weird make your game thing, and then it didn't do so well, and then they brought Conker into it to give it a bit of a boost. So there was a Conker branded version of it. That's why it was getting mixed up.
Yeah,
Anyway,
because they debuted at like E3 or something like that, or a trade show, and people were just like, oh, so it's just another Banjo-Kazooie game, and they're like, oh, geez, all right, we've got to change this up. And then they just completely rewrote the entire game and restructured the whole thing and just made it way more crass.
I've not played Conkers in a long time, but like the thing that's always burnt into my brain are those like 8 kilohertz voice samples that are in the game.
Oh,
They just
yeah,
sound like they're so compressed. It is ridiculous.
It is 1,000 times better though than the Xbox remake, where they redid everything. No, because the guy who did the voices, he came back and did new recordings, but he didn't record all the new dialogue. So you get like the really bad original audio, and then you get like this new thing, and it's just like, you know,
That's a weird choice.
That is true, but also, like graphically, it's way more superior on the Xbox. Even just like your Xbox original, like looks incredible for an Xbox.
Yeah,
100%.
I remember the fur tech on that
Yeah.
game.
The fur tech and the lighting, especially with bloom lighting and stuff. That game looks incredible.
The multiplayer mode with the teddies and the World War II spin-off.
The Saving Private Ryan intro sequence where everyone's just getting absolutely murdered on the beachfront.
The fluff flies in that one.
The reason I was hesitant to answer the question about whether or not the series is still going is because it did actually have a release in 2016, of all things. A new game on the Microsoft HoloLens called Young Conquer.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't classify that
Wild.
as a game, because it's on a platform that's not a game platform.
Well, I mean, you can have. I mean, like phones aren't a game
like
platform,
if
but
somebody puts a game on your Samsung smart fridge. It's not really a game because you can't play.
Oh, it's totally a game.
yeah. I mean, if it's a digital thing that you can play, then it's a video game, I guess.
Look at this guy gatekeeping gaming.
Yeah, I know, right? A fridge isn't a gaming platform.
If I had my way, I'd start axing a whole bunch of crap from the eShop, man. I tell you.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm sure we would. That about wraps up this episode of the Vookcast. Be sure to visit the site www.vooks.net for all your Nintendo news, reviews, and everything in between. To keep up to date, follow the site on Twitter at vooks.net, all spelled out, or jump on over to our Discord at bit.ly/vooksdiscord. You can also follow us on Blue Sky, which is just vooks.net. It's not spelled out there because Twitter is a hellhole now. So, you can find all of our social information and links for all the stories covered in this episode in the episode notes on whatever platform you're listening to. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you in the next show.